Welcome to the Innate Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Loren Sofia, healer of my own fertility and health struggles, mother, functional fertility coach to thousands of women, and owner of Innate Fertility. I believe your body is innately wise, and so is your fertility. Sometimes we just need the tools to unlock it in abundance. I'm honored to guide you through each episode where we'll cover not just fertility, but how to rediscover the innate wisdom of your body, restore your connection with your physiology, bioenergetics, and metabolism, and get back in touch with Mother Nature and ancestral traditions. Today, I'm welcoming Nick and Nathan from Mitigate Stress, who both have roots in the fitness world, but have also struggled with their own health issues. And they have been on the hamster wheel of health and wellness trends until they finally broke the chains. And once they did, they found true and sustainable health. Nick and Nathan not only developed their own version of functional bodybuilding, but a really unique approach that honors the fascia of your body, which is the connective tissue that surrounds your muscles, blood vessels, and nerves. And if you're in my course, a shout out to those students practicing self-myofascial release to support their fertility. I love this. They've also developed an incredibly thoughtful supplement line called Mitigate Stress. I personally adore their magnesium bicarbonate and shilajit, and their whole goal is to truly mitigate stress. And that's what their philosophy really centers around. It's not some radical or extreme way of living. It focuses on highlighting the areas that you might be missing in your daily routine so that you can simplify your life and live. Their approach really resonates with me because this is exactly what I see with the women that come to work with me. They are either doing way too much to try and support their fertility, everything under the sun, their routine is militant and they're usually honestly miserable, or they're not doing it nearly enough to make a difference in their fertility. Just the basics that they think they should be doing that somebody they saw on Instagram is doing or that they read in a book. And so it's on either side of the extremes and really unfocused energy. And this is what I do. I help them find the missing links so that they can stop wasting time, money, and energy and actually enjoy the process of getting pregnant, of optimizing their fertility while reaching their fertility goals of becoming a mother. I think you'll find a lot of relatable and realistic information in this episode, and I love having diverse guests on, and I want to share that Nick and Nathan are of the Orthodox Christian faith, and you may hear some of this flavor from them too. I hope you enjoy. All right, everyone, I'm super excited today to welcome Nick and Nathan from Mitigate Stress. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, super excited to be chatting with you both today. I so admire all the work that you do and really the approach that you take, the philosophy behind it, which we'll talk about today. But for those of the audience that are not familiar, would you mind sharing your story and what led you to doing the work that you're doing today?
When I was 5 years old, my dad went through a terminal illness, and that kind of struck our family to make some changes in our life. Led him to one thing to the next, to going to Sedona and doing all these alternative holistic therapies and Reiki and homeopathic alternatives. And long story short, the doctors basically said he had a certain amount of time to live. It was a pretty serious terminal illness. I'm not going to get into too much detail on that. But, certain amount of time to live. And, well, he outlived that. And he believed a lot of it was his mind, did a lot of fasting, a lot of nutritional protocols. But eventually went into vegetarianism and veganism, and we, as a family, as a collective, joined in and stopped eating eggs and pork and meat and stuff. And it was great for a while. It was a great experience as a family together, but over time we just saw that our health degraded really fast. Especially when you're growing up, it's completely different. For a lot of people don't realize. So basically, 10, 15 years after that, I started really feeling the effects of vegetarianism and veganism. And I do think a lot of my health problems were related to me as a child being traumatized from, thinking my dad was going to leave this world. I was in denial of it for so long, and it took me so long to realize that, oh, wow, I'm holding on to this anxiety, basically. It basically took me out of the present. I distracted myself with a lot of video games, and in my mind, crazy thoughts all the time. And of course, the diet didn't help, So fast forward, I guess, 15 years, I met him at Gold's Gym in Herndon, Virginia. And he was the assistant fitness director. I was just a personal trainer coming on board. And we didn't really talk to each other at first for a while. And eventually we became friends. And then fast forward, I moved in to like a townhouse. It was basically like a frat house. And it was with a bunch of different people from Gold's Gym. And I guess he experienced like a relapse.
Yeah.
We'll go into his stories now.
I grew up on the standard American diet. My parents did the best they could. They didn't know any better. I'm sure. I don't know if you did, but everything from cereals to, I'm sure most of your listeners grew up on the whole, pasteurized milk and muffins, cakes, you name it, all the crap food, just not well-sourced meats, and just learning that now. But yeah, I grew up on that. I was 18 at a college down in Southern Virginia. And I first had Bell's palsy where the whole left side of my body, just kind of went numb. I didn't have any nerve firings on that side. Doctors didn't know what to do. I was in the hospital for weeks. I had like a PICC line put in because they said it was Lyme, when, it's in our viewpoint now, it was just an overabundance of toxicity and adrenaline and stress hormones that caused that issue to happen. And I didn't know any better, so I just went along with the system and did all the antibiotics. Of course, I grew up on a bunch of, injections as well. I'm sure many followers and listeners understand the terrible effects of those, which probably affected a lot of my issues. And of course, with the diet, with the alcohol, with the drugs, in combination, all that. Even though I looked healthy on the outside, it still made an impact. And of course, I just lived my life after that in college. You just want to have fun. You're on your own. Did that whole thing. That's when I met Nick after college. I started personal training, getting into bodybuilding. He was a power lifter, bodybuilder. We both kind of had that drive to do that. And that's when I was 24. I had another kind of health scare where I just had all this pain in my joints. I felt just very inflamed and swollen everywhere. My legs just felt very stiff. I was stiff everywhere, even though, again, I looked, as you say, great on the outside, as most you see people in the fitness industry nowadays. I'm sure we'll get into, but again, just was feeling like crap. I had fatigue. I had inflammation in all my joints. I hurt. And I was like, why am I feeling like this? I'm 24 years old. This shouldn't be happening. So it kind of made me take a step back. And that's when I met Nick, and just people in my life at that time were just kind of influencing me to look at different things. And Nick was the biggest influence to change my diet, to start changing my water, because his family kind of was already on the whole water quality thing 20 years ago before it even was a thing, so he was kind of ahead of the game on that. And he was, I think, getting out of vegetarian, and I was like wanting to go into it. I was like, oh, let me give up meat and see how I feel. So I did that, went vegan basically within 2 weeks, and did that for just about a year. And it took me just about a year to realize, okay, this is not good for our biology or chemistry at all. I pulled like muscles in the bottom of my foot and my hamstring. And that's what kind of led us into getting into the trigger pointing, the type of breathing we're doing, the corrective exercises, the walking, our whole hydration guide. But yeah, it just, I'm sure I could talk more about the whole health issue, but it just gets you kind of to look at things at a different viewpoint. And ultimately it leads us to finding truth, which we found in the whole spiritual aspect of our guide and in our pillars to our business, which we believe is in the Orthodox Church, and finding God. And that's what really ultimately saved us at the end of the day. Being saved as well. I know I'm going on a tangent, but it's more than the kind of Protestant belief in being saved. But yeah, that all the health issues, what I'm trying to say and get at is led me to wanting to find truth and looking into the health aspect of food, to nourishment of the food, to the movement and the fitness stuff. It all kind of made us look at it in a holistic viewpoint. And that's, what our whole business and philosophy is about, is taking the holistic approach. Just like our spiritual father says, we can't, just hyperanalyze or radically focus on one thing, and we just get to extremism about it. And that's what, it's not good, and we've both been, I can blame myself, we've both been too extreme in each one of these categories in our business. And, we have to take more of a balanced approach. So,
No, thank you so much for sharing that. I think personal experiences are really, they just become the catalyst for huge changes. And I think so many of us in this sort of health and wellness space are here because of our own personal turmoils and learnings and the quest for truth. Of course, there's a lot of people that want to take advantage of the health and wellness industry as well and what it is, and take advantage of trends, seeing it only as like money dollar signs. But I really appreciate the integrity that you guys bring to the space and just the transparency and authenticity. And so after Gold's Gym, you guys met, and from there it was it was written in stone.
Well, when I moved in, that's when he had his second experience with Bell's palsy, because he thought he was done, right? So that was the catalyst that really drove him into having the reality check. And then I actually, myself, we moved into his client's basement, and I actually ended up pushing a very small kidney stone. It wasn't crazy, but spinach, oxalates. I thought I was on the healthiest diet still. And of course, he got to blame him. He got me back into vegan. No, but I obviously wanted to experiment. I was excited and stuff. And I was eating a bunch of eggs at the time. So I went from 20-year veganism with all these different raw vegan diets into vegetarianism. Then I meet him. We're like, let's take care of our health. Then our health got really bad. Then we started looking into more, meat, carnivore, one extreme to the next, to the next, to the next. Yeah. Then we got into Ray Peat. And, then we thought we knew everything, of course, with Ray Peat. So it's like constantly making sure that you got this humility check is the number one thing. Because there's a saint, I wish I had the quote here, but basically the saint says, like, to assume that we are living without deception is deception itself. Like, we're always deceived. Yeah. And that's the essence of humility, is like you can't possibly think you know absolute truth. And I actually read this really good book from this gentleman. I wish I could share it. It's called The Ray Peat Diet or something. It's basically a guy that's talking about Ray Peat from a non-cultish standpoint, because a lot of people in the Ray Peat community make it very cultish. And Ray Peat never actually wanted the diet to be, and there was no such thing as a Ray Peat diet. He just wants to create like a baseline of biochemistry and knowledge, right? So at the end of that book, what I got out of it was, he said, we have to stop, thinking we have absolution, or assuming we have absolute knowledge. It's really, it's such a humility check often. So then all of our pillars were starting to come together, because, when you try a new diet, especially a radical one, you feel great. 2 months. Any change. And we were so focused on the diet, the nourish part. And it is important. It is very important. The problem is, though, these diets, that's why they're called diets, is they always eliminate some kind of macronutrient. Even the Ray Peat diet can eliminate too much fat, in our opinion. And there's a time and place. Obviously, it's the type of fats, the right type of fats. Make sure your fats are more raw, not overly cooked, or seed oils and stuff like that. And then just obviously, we talked with, about Jack Cruz a lot, and EMF and blue light. We already were on that. But like he said, once we added more of the mental component, we realized, okay, we have these 3 pillars, but we're still not really feeling like we're healthy, because your mind controls a lot. I mean, my dad always told me about this study back then when I was a kid. It's kind of like the study that kind of, in our opinion, made him beat cancer, was the mind. They said they basically did this test on 2 inmates that were on death row, and they slit both their wrists, and they had a bucket, and it was dripping water. Long story short, I think they both ended up dying, but they never slit their wrists. It was just the fear of death the whole time. They thought they were literally bleeding out. Not sure where I can get that study. It's an old study he told me about, but it was powerful enough for me to take that through life and be like, okay, your mind is really a problem. Really, it makes a big difference. For example, like movement. I worked with a physical therapist, one of the best in the world, I'd have to say. And she said she's been all over the world. And she's like, Nick, I got to say, physical therapy, movement, it's all important. But a lot of these dysfunctions that people have are 100% emotionally related. Kyphotic curves and stuff. It's depression, anxiety, anger, turmoil, resentment. So that's when we got into really, researching the studying of the saints and the church fathers and their teachings. And we really highly recommend people look up the church fathers and the teachings of the saints, because they just have such simple teachings on how to really, shift your mind. And like my friend always says, if you give it an inch, you can go a mile. And so basically, that's where we're at right now. We got 4 pillars: nourish, move, environment, mental, and spiritual.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I do think the mental side of it is just so interwoven into the other parts too, the other areas you can heal. And the question with like studies like that is like, is it moral? But there is one, I'm not sure if you've heard of the monster study.
No, no, I
Okay.
haven't.
Well, I forget the name of the doctor that performed it, but he received a lot of criticism because of this, because it was done on children. I think it was children in an orphanage. And hopefully, for those of you listening, definitely go look this up because I don't want to misrepresent anything, but this is what I remember. He basically divided the children into 2 groups, and one group was told that they had speech impediments and were treated like they had speech impediments when they didn't. So they were told they had a stutter, they were told they had some other kinds of speech impediments, and then the other group of children was just treated like normal children, even if they had speech impediments. And what happened over time is that the children that were treated like they had speech impediments, even though they didn't have any speech impediments, ended up developing speech impediments. And I feel like, yes, children are very malleable at a very young age and very absorbent. But I think that just goes to show how powerful also the environment around you and how it can influence your own health and well-being and the way you manifest in the world is. So that's another interesting one that sticks out to me as far as like the connection between the mental side of things and how that is really powerful.
That's crazy.
It is definitely not a moral study and probably wouldn't be able to be done now, but
Yeah.
it definitely makes you
Well,
think.
they're already doing it in real time with the way they're, I don't want to get into political, but with the way they're teaching our children. And I mean, it's local for us with our public schools.
Yeah.
We're learning about the books they're putting in and stuff, and the grooming, we'll call it that, So it's very real and very present.
Yes, I can definitely see exactly what you mean. And only time will tell if we really learn from what we're doing now, but hopefully we do sooner than later. But yeah, so I love the philosophy. I think it's very powerful. Can you walk us through maybe each pillar of your philosophy a little more in depth, or which one you feel like is maybe the most overlooked or is the one that's the most important?
Okay. We can definitely cover every one of them. And then definitely, focus more on the one we find most important. So we have nourish, number 1. Got to have your food, got to have your calories. That's the one that, of course, we started with. That's the one that everyone
usually starts
kind of talks about online.
Seems to be the most popular on IG, all the food reels and just it's
true though, because like,
so easy.
You have to have calories. You can't be moving without calories. You got to have fuel for the Ferrari, right? So basically with nourish, how we take it is we really have tried hard to avoid becoming too authoritarian, too dogmatic with nutrition, and try to, like he always says, try to take more of a holistic approach. So how do we do that? Well, one, we keep all the macros in. We don't remove them. If you are doing something like a low FODMAP carnivore diet, it's great for some of those that need it, maybe for a month to 2 months max. But then that's more of just an elimination diet. We don't recommend that for everyone, and we don't recommend fasting for everyone. But these are things that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater per se. So there's always this. We're trying to do that. Like for example, Fallon, one of our followers, we follow her. She, was talking about beans with us, and me being vegetarian for 20 years, I was traumatized from beans. So I'm like, well, maybe I can eat that again. Some people say it's healthy. It's not healthy. It's healthy if you sprout it. Some people say it creates more plants defense chemicals when you do sprout it. So we do have to have some kind of discernment. We are in the age of discernment. And that's why it's important to have a foundation first. That's the point of our nourish, which is got to have your meat, got to have your butter or a fat source. Mm-hmm. If you're a vegetarian, focus more on coconuts. If I was a vegetarian, I would focus more on, raw saturated fats like coconuts, red palm oil, raw cacao butter. And then if you're vegan, well, at least be a vegetarian, please. But we try to get people on raw dairy, It's definitely something that's very controversial. Butter is a lot more easier to digest. If you can't digest that, you can most definitely digest ghee. but we try to keep our fats raw because studies have shown that all fats can harden in the liver, and that's what causes the cholesterol and the heart disease and et cetera.
The fat molecule can also increase, like they say, 40 to 60 times its actual size when you cook it. So, a lot of, especially women, deal with cellulite or whatnot can be caused from a lot of these cooked fats. If instead we just eat them raw, you don't essentially bloat up as more. You can still eat a lot of fat and not get super, super light fat as we deem in society. And that's another thing in Nourish. And another PhD, Agenus von der Planets, I'm sure people have heard of or not. He has a lot of good information on the Nourish side of things, is getting a lot of fat, especially in our over toxic society with all the chemicals that's introduced into our day and age. Every single year, there's thousands of new chemicals from the clothes, from the food, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners know about. It's everywhere, from paints to solvents to off-gassing of stuff. We need this fat in our system more than ever to help bind to these toxins and help remove them safely out from our body, or else, like someone like me who was kind of skinnier back when I had my health issues, I just think I didn't have enough raw fat to help bind to these toxins. And yeah, Nick too, and I'm sure most people, we need fat to help bind to the toxins and remove them out of our body, from heavy metals to whatnot. And it is super important. And yeah, like Nick was saying, some people might not be able to get on the raw dairy or not be able to source it, but that's also another thing we talk about in our Nourish, is sourcing foods properly, where to source them, which makes the whole world of a difference of getting meat from, say, a grocery store. It could be organic, but it can be given some sort of, shots or injections, when going to your local farmer and looking for some more, naturally raised, as God intended, meat that's not given anything, that's raised on pasture and grass. And it can make the world of a difference of what you're eating and how that animal is treated as well. So that's another thing with how we source our food. How
you eat too. How you eat, time windows, combining.
Yeah, there's so many things. I mean, we don't really go into that too much. We just want to, like Nick said, be that kind of just holistic and not too much of an authoritarian viewpoint. The other thing we talk about in Nourish is the whole hydration of nourishing. Most people think they're going to get hydrated from drinking water, when in reality, that's not the case. We have to drink water with minerals and electrolytes, and we have to get water through our fresh fruits and fresh produce, ideally, and of course through raw fats. That's how we actually hydrate, through our food. It's just like when you put oil in your car, that's how we lubricate everything that goes on. You're not going to pour water in your car. It's not going to hydrate. Or if you put water on your skin, it doesn't hydrate your skin. It's a solvent. So same thing externally is going to happen internally when we drink too much water. It's just going to strip our body of the fat, and it's going to strip it of minerals. So it could actually be dehydrating you more, which I'm sure many of your followers hopefully understand the whole water hydration concept. But
well, yeah, with water, what we always recommend is drinking no more than a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons every 5 minutes max, because you drink too much, you start stripping the mucus lining off the kidneys. And again, like you said, it's a solvent, pulls minerals. And the cells don't want just water. They want the nutrients bound to that water. Because can you imagine just flooding all your cells with a bunch of water? It wouldn't work. They need nutrients, they need minerals, fatty soluble vitamins, fatty soluble minerals, water soluble fats as well. All that, it has to be water soluble. There has to be ionic activity, ionic exchange between these nutrients. And so we're in a world where we're over exercising, we're going to get into, and we're over drinking water. And this is actually why I think I had my health crisis. I thought I was super healthy, drinking half gallon, got up to a gallon, and eventually a gallon and a half of water. And you're just flooding your body. And we have this mindset. We're going to go into exercise now, movement. We have this mindset, which actually came from, circa 1960s, Arnold Schwarzenegger, working out 6-7 days a week. There's actually a lot of bodybuilders that were against that back then, but somehow that became the mainstream narrative where, like Mike Menser said, who's a famous bodybuilder, you basically lose your life in the gym. You want a life or not? Like, you don't want to waste your time in the gym. You want to get in and get out 20, 40 minutes max. But Arnold created this society where people are literally just gym nuts,
just in the gym,
crazy people. Gym rats, there you go.
we were there.
Yeah, we were gym rats. And so that's all we knew. That's all our entire fitness kind of system is based off as well. And, Mike Menser and Tom Platz, who are legendary bodybuilders, both follow a completely opposite spectrum. And they actually said when they worked out with Arnold Schwarzenegger, they actually got smaller because it was just too much. They either needed to rest more, sleep more. We don't believe that there truly is overtraining. It's just under resting
and
under recovering. And if you can't recover, well, then you're overtraining technically, So it's more complicated than that. But, we try to promote, whereas a lot of the Ray Peak community or a lot of the Nourish community kind of, not all of them, I don't want to put everyone in one box, but a lot of people are kind of scared of exercise, or working out. There's a reason why, yes, but we try to take a different approach. We view movement almost just as important as nutrition, because one, if you look at our natural world, what is natural, whatever, but if you look at the older world, we didn't have cars, we didn't have transportation, we had horses, of course, but we were walking a lot, we were moving, hinging, picking things up, etc. And we look at like the work of Thomas Myers, who we talk a lot about, and he talks about fascia and how important it is to wring out that sponge every single day. Basically, you have to wring out that sponge with movement, with pressure, with twisting, because you have to get rid of that old dirty water, those old metabolites or metabolic waste products, right? And you have to bring in that nutrient-dense water. So if you're drinking, even if you are doing everything right, where you're making the right drinks with magnesium and...
Yeah, you're doing a lot of... We promote this lubrication formula or moisturizing formula. Agenus von your planets, he talks a lot about it. It's just raw butter, egg, honey, and lemon. It's like a lemon meringue kind of drink, and it's great to just help get nutrients, not only to the inside of your organs, but most people are starved far away from the organs, like their skin, and it helps get nutrients all over the body. But yeah, like Nick was saying, you could be doing all the nutrition stuff, but if your fascia is dehydrated and then there's no fluidity throughout your body, the nutrients aren't going to get to every cell throughout your body. So you could be eating great, but you could still be having some skin issues or something, and we see that a lot. But yeah, the wringing out the fascia, it's like remolding that dry clay. We want to hydrate it, not with water, of course, but we want to hydrate it through certain other things, like we talk about hot baths and movement, of course, and trigger pointing and food. Why not just attack it from all different angles? Because you're limiting yourself by just trying to think you're going to fix a lot of your issues from just nourishing. And you can fix a lot with Nourish. Don't get me wrong. I've been slacking on the trigger pointing side to our business just because, life gets to you and you have to work on your priorities. And that's where we created the hydration guide to just really nail the heavy hitters. And that goes into our philosophy as well as everything you can find about our philosophy is in the hydration guide. So
sustainability. We want realism.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the crux of your philosophy, which I love. I think you made so many great points, and I agree completely. I think nourishment is really important, but a lot of people, I think, just kind of gravitate towards that because maybe it seems like the most low-hanging fruit or the easiest thing that they can supplement with. And, that's going to solve my problem if I could just get this nutrient. And that happens a lot in my world, especially in regards to fertility. Oh, how can I boost my progesterone? What supplement can I take, or what food do I need to eat? But really, it's so much more than that. And you'll gain so much more wellness and fertility if you look outside just that kind of like narrow tunnel view. And I totally agree with the hormonal imbalances and hydrating your fascia and detoxification too, because your lymphatic system does not move unless you do.
Exactly.
You're not going to get any lymphatic drainage if you're not moving. So if you have hormonal imbalances, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to support yourself if you are not moving. And humans were meant to move. So loved what you had to say there. Anything else you would add?
A couple more. Speaking of hormonal balances, would you say blood sugar is probably the number one thing that is the direct influence on people's hormonal imbalances?
Yeah, definitely one of the top, especially fertility as well. I think a lot of people don't realize how intertwined fertility is to blood sugar too. So yeah, it's definitely a key one that needs to be addressed immediately.
Exactly. So the number one way we believe to really regulate your blood sugar, even if you are sensitive to carbohydrates and everything you eat, you're just reacting. You feel your blood sugar go crazy. You feel lethargic, adrenal fatigue, whatever, is to just simply walk after each meal. There's so many studies now proving that if you just do a 10-minute walk after each meal, so that's 3 times a day, that will completely regulate, not everybody, but some people, their blood sugar. And it just, not only that, but digestion. I mean, that's huge. Those are the 2 biggest things. And if you just simply add a walk in, so sometimes we're so focused, it's the food. It's not the food. You're just not moving enough. It's that simple. Sometimes, not everybody, but a lot of times that's the problem.
Hey, it's Loren. If you feel overwhelmed because you're not sure where to start preparing your body for pregnancy, if you feel like you've tried everything that you can find in books, podcasts, and on social media, if you feel like you get the runaround to your questions with overgeneralized responses and answers, I see you and I hear you. And this is exactly what I help you do. I help you cut through the noise and figure out exactly what you need to focus on based on the gaps in your fertility. You already have so much on your plate and no one has time to waste when it comes to making a baby. And if you're somebody that has other unique health situations, like a history of miscarriages, PCOS, endometriosis, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, fibroids, polyps, adenomyosis, unexplained infertility, secondary infertility. Maybe you didn't even have your period for a couple of years, or you're coming off of hormonal birth control. Maybe you're over 35 or over 40, or you're trying to conceive while you're breastfeeding. You might even be considering or definitely moving forward with fertility treatments. I want to address you too, because I know how important it is to get the individualized support that you need too. Regardless of if you have those conditions coming into my program, it's not only going to specifically address those conditions because we have specific protocols for all of those unique situations, but the program is going to teach you the foundational pieces of fertility that cannot be skipped no matter what else is going on. And that is often the thing that I see the women that work with me miss, which is why they might actually think that it's a condition keeping them from getting pregnant or reaching their pregnancy goals, or maybe that's why they've developed a certain pregnancy complication, but it's actually a combination of the foundations that they're missing in addition to some of these things that might be specific to their unique condition and body. And it's both of these things together, the foundational support and individual support for your specific condition, that is what's going to increase your fertility, and both of these things together are what's in my program. I invite you to learn more by visiting innatefertility.org/get-pregnant for more information. And if you're loving the show, don't forget to leave a review. Now back to the episode. I agree.
Yeah, and we know, we talked about it years ago, and we haven't really talked too much, but the whole movement side, we incorporate certain corrective exercises to trigger point, but your nervous system, which is in your spine, controls every function to your body biologically, from your digestion to your circulation of blood, to your sleep, to hormones, potentially to digestion, to recovery. So we want to make sure that nervous system in your spine is not compressed. Many people nowadays were very compressed from sitting, of course, from whatever. It could be injuries, it could be any type of stress, car accidents, you name it. We want to really focus on our nervous system, which is through our posture, through how we breathe, and how we create what we call pressure throughout the body. We want to learn how to create pressure, because that can also influence how we digest food and whatnot, and how we sleep. And yeah, that's going to be benefited through walking. Of course, you could walk, but it's not only it's what we do, but it's also how we do it, how we walk. And that's a big thing that we do cover in the hydration guide is how we do things. Is very overlooked in the fitness industry through simple exercises. Many people just think nowadays, I have to go do 3 sets of 10 reps of this, but you could do 1 set of 1 rep of a corrective exercise that we teach, and it can yield way more results than just doing 3 sets of 10 of a simple whatever squat or something. We really break down going into so many different cues, really breaking down an exercise into little cues that can make such of a difference and doing it properly. If we're just going through the motions, just like with anything in our life, we want to really be methodical in how we do it, because if we're doing something over and over again and it's not proper, it can pull us in the opposite direction of where we want to go. So that's more into the movement. And then we have, of course, environment and our spiritual pillar as well.
I wish I had this study too, but it was from a gentleman online, and he basically got into forest bathing. Everyone knows about forest bathing, the statistics, the percentages that increase with the immune system, et cetera.
Just for the audience, in case they don't know what forest bathing is, can you share?
It's basically just going in the forest. It can be anything. You could be meditating in the forest, you could be walking in the forest, climbing trees, but you're just in preferably a dense forest or an ocean. You have the negative ions, you have the frequencies, which are ebbing and flowing. That's what the Blue Shield guy talks about, that scalar energy. But it's just, you're in that environment, you're away from, even if there is cellular towers around and you are in the city with a lot of pollution, just get yourself into the woods, no matter how small it may be. It's better than nothing. Yeah. But that's basically what forest bathing is, going inside the woods. I think he was diagnosed with some form of not lung cancer. Maybe it was, I can't remember exactly what cancer was. Long story short, basically, he recovered from it from I think 6 months of just walking in the woods, I think 2 hours a day for a whole year. And obviously he's still doing it, but that was just kind of mind blowing for me, that simple study. And it's something that I already kind of knew, but just to hear more of it, more results, more proof that, wow, he didn't do anything else. This is why we have these pillars, because each one in and of themselves is that much of a foundation. But when you combine them all, wow, you got a powerhouse, and there's no way that you can go the other direction, because ultimately our philosophy is just moving that needle, that trajectory towards life, like our spiritual father teaches us, again, a 3% grade. We talked about this earlier. I'm a super radicalist. He's much more controlled than me.
Getting better.
But radicalism, we learn in our catechism through our church, is that radicalism is an act of pride. When we try to do something, that's why we talked about Arnold Schwarzenegger and the workout mentality, the philosophy of today's modern globo gym, right? Everyone's it's go hard or go home. It's no pain, no gain. And that's a terrible mindset on a lot of things, because we compare ourselves to athletes, especially if I get into a new activity. I look at the top and I'm like, oh, I gotta catch up. That's not the case. They don't do that. That's impossible. They are slowly adding on layers and layers. Like they always say, you just got to do better than you did yesterday. And like our spiritual father always tells us, the most important thing is to just enjoy the journey and be present. Because if you're not present, then you're missing out on everything. Because escaping yourself from the past or the future and worrying about that's escaping reality. The only reality is right now. Mm-hmm. So as far as environment goes, that was more spiritual, but mental. As far as environment goes, yeah, obviously EMF, we just wrote a guide about that as well. It's coming out.
That blog will launch tomorrow. Yeah.
We'll make sure to link that.
For sure. Yeah, thank you. And basically we just, with environment, we just want people to get out and stack these habits. So if you're going to go for a walk, it'd be best to go walk in the woods or just somewhere with some nature. That's all we're trying to really say. We're not trying to have all these crazy compartments and stuff. We're trying to combine everything to a really realistic, sustainable lifestyle routine that people can look at and not get scared and turn their eyes, but actually be like, oh, okay, that's doable. But also at the same time be like, oh, this is actually yielding some pretty profound changes and results. So environment, you can't heal in the environment that made you sick. So
yeah, that's true.
That's the first thing that usually has to change, whether it's the food in your environment, the pantry, right? Or if you're sleeping right next to a Wi-Fi router, your phone's not on airplane mode, it's right next to your head when you sleep. No, he did that.
Yeah, I slept with it right under my pillow.
I mean, we all did stupid stuff, right? So, smart meters, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't mean people kind of go, again, extreme, where they're like, oh, I just got to move out into the woods. No, we're not saying that. There's modern technological interventions that we have to our disposal, luckily in today's world, that we can utilize right away from Amazon or whatever, and to help mitigate these stressors. For example, like Blue Shield, which helps to, you can't really eliminate EMF. That's the philosophy of Blue Shield. Instead, it creates a scalar kind of environment that's similar to nature, which has a specific algorithm that's constantly changing. And your body basically attunes to it. Because it's not that EMF is so bad. It's the constant repetitiveness of that EMF that gets annoying to our body. Because if you go in nature, the ocean is ebbing and flowing. And the trees and the woods are, the leaves are, rustling through the wind from the wind. You got even the crickets. Each cricket has different frequencies, or maybe the cicadas are toxic. I don't know. They they get a little annoying sometimes. Frogs. I know my mom went nuts with frogs outside because my parents have a pool, so that can obviously make you go crazy. So not everything in nature is healthy or safe always.
And that, I think that flows into the whole your perspective. I think that's a big thing in our mental spiritual is just how we perceive our stress too, and that's where everything in our pillars is going to help you perceive stress better, hopefully.
Yeah, that's the most important.
And
actually.
Not reacting. We still do it. We're not perfect. That's part of our journey here on earth, is to continue to try to get better each and every day and learn from our past, from sins and whatnot that we're committing or reacting or whatever it may be. Whatever our issues are, we have to start to become aware of what's causing us these reactions or these frustrations in our life, and why is it causing us that? Why do we react to certain things? And most of the time, it's our own problem. It's ourself that we have to change, and how we can see things at a different viewpoint, look at things in a different way, and just how we react to it. I think we all do, and I've learned so much from my past of how I can see myself reacting less and less, and just from just trying to be in the most humble point, just being the humblest person. We just want to just look at our own self and see what's wrong with our own self. And usually when we react, it's like, I don't know.
There's an underlying cause.
Yeah, it's
what is causing that? What's provoking that reaction?
Well.
No, that's a good point. What is causing that reaction?
Yeah, why is it ticking us off, or why are we getting frustrated? It's usually we just need to we need to humble ourselves more. Or we need to just give more grace to that person and realize, whatever, I get frustrated sometimes when I drive on the road and I hate getting in traffic, and I get frustrated and I just want to not be there. I'm like, why am I here in this? And it's usually trying to teach me something. God's trying to teach me something, where I need to be more patient, or I need to just pray for somebody. I don't need to react, because like Nick was just saying, it's the now. I'm in the reality. This is reality. I can't teleport myself somewhere to get me out of my problem. And our spiritual father says this all the time. He's like, you think moving or switching jobs or doing something different is going to make you happier. It's not. Your problems are going to follow you wherever you go. He says it's like bearing down. He's like, when we start to get this feeling of, I just need to move and leave or switch jobs or change careers, it's like, no, we need to just go even harder at what we're doing and focus and stay. It's stability almost is what the word is I'm trying to say, is we just need that stability in our life. And I know we don't talk much about it in our pillar because it goes deep into like catechism and what we learn, because that's still what we're learning on. So we're not like experts at it, but we believe the whole stability is a big portion, importance to our life, stability, community. Of course, that's all incorporated into the mental and spiritual aspect. We think it's important. So
yeah, you have radicalism, end of the spectrum. We talked about that. That's an act of pride. That's the extremism. And then you have slow and steady, consistency, stability. That's the opposite. That's what we're trying to achieve. And again, going back to the athlete comparison, like a bodybuilder, you can't force your muscles to grow more than they can. Like, you have to just be consistent. That's the only way you can grow muscles. Or an athlete, again,
True.
It took Usain Bolt, like 4 years to shave off like 1/10 a second on his time or something like that. I mean, it's that vision, it's that goal, and it's just being focused and present. I'm reading this book on discipline. It's called The Power of Discipline, posted the other day. And it's something like, temptation is the enemy of discipline, or it's what keeps us from being present, focused, and disciplined with what our goals, what we're trying to achieve. So you have to have these spiritual and mental, we call them spiritual, but we say mental too, because we don't want to freak anyone out with some type of like, wishy-washy kind of dogmatic belief system. Whereas it's like actual practical stuff that's tangible, that you can actually utilize in your day-to-day life. Again, we're not trying to push things unless they have some kind of application in your life. That's every pillar, everything we talk about.
Yeah, you make so many great points, and I kind of just want to touch upon a couple of them. I think, especially in regards to like feeling like you have to move on to that next job, or get out and do this workout. It's kind of like a coping mechanism, I think, from what I've seen in my clients as well. Instead of just dealing with the actual problem at hand, they're seeking external sort of ways to kind of cope with their problems, which can lead to, just mind numbing themselves in a really difficult workout, or throwing themselves into a really restrictive diet to distract themselves from the actual problem that is really underlying. So I think that, if you feel like you're somebody that is moving on from one thing to the next thing and not actually maybe dealing with those problems, that it might be worth just pausing and just sitting with it for a little bit, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And that discomfort is why we choose to keep doing those things, so we don't feel it. But, it's going to keep, like you said, it's going to keep chasing us if we don't address it.
True. Yeah.
That's very well how you explained it. Perfect.
Oh. Thank you. I used to coach CrossFit, and I would see this all the time. Like, we'd have people working in an office just come into the gym and just be like, I'm just going to throw myself into this workout. I don't care what my form looks like. I just want to shut my brain off. And,
Oh, yeah.
that's then run home, then deal with
That's
the
scary.
home problems. Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
And it's coping. And so it's difficult to coach out of somebody or coach somebody on, because you have to have the self-awareness and be willing to address those things. And sometimes the answer is not what you have to offer. It's actually some other, thing that they maybe don't want to dabble in, but it could be so worth it, especially for long-term health and well-being. And I did also really love what you said about the reaction. So I think definitely, we're allowed to acknowledge our emotions. I think it's important information, but I think instead of reacting, responding, and I think that's what you were saying, is like just taking an assessment of the situation, and just kind of, before you decide what to do, if anything, thinking about how you want to show up for this person, whether it be a prayer or whether it be even just being nicer to them, understanding that they're the one reacting, you're the one responding. Um, so I think that's also really important too. And as you become more regulated, and I think this is ultimately what you are saying, is you have to learn how to regulate yourself, because everything else is out of your control, and no one's going to be responsible for regulating yourself except for you. I think that that's a problem I see a lot in today's society, especially on social media, where people project their traumas or insecurities, and they expect other people to take that on and to apologize for making them feel a certain way, when it's really the person who originally made the comment. It's their problem that they have to work through. And when this happens, I try to have empathy for that person, for not necessarily for what I triggered them on, but for the dysregulation they might be feeling in that place in life that they might be at, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Anxiety, right? They don't know how to control it.
Right. So yeah, I kind of wanted to just go through those points, because I think you brought up really great points. And the mental and spiritual aspect, I feel like, is just such a big part of healing and overall wellness. And so you would consider the mental and spiritual pillar of the mitigate stress philosophy the most important, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it was the last pillar we kind of came across, from wanting just truth and realizing, we are here for a short time. This is a temporary life, and that there are more important things to focus on. As we believe as Orthodox Christians, we're just here passing by, and yes, this life is a test for us to become holy. That's our goal here is to become like, I don't know, this may scare a lot of people, but like God, lowercase g. We're made in the image of God, and that's why He created us, is to have communion with Him. And just like, I'm sure a lot of people we see on social media talk about how important community is, it is very important that we have a community, because that is who God is. He's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and He is a communion of persons. And that's essentially what we need here is a community with people. And that's what we believe is found in the church. And yes, it can be found in people you live with too.
Wherever you are.
Yeah.
You can't isolate yourself.
The community aspect too, I think, is really important, especially, in regards to fertility and motherhood. I think there are rising rates of postpartum depression, rising rates of antepartum depression, so anxiety during pregnancy. At least by default, I get a lot of questions about this. And just, we have diminishing rates of breastfeeding, and, it's a whole conversation, but a whole can of worms, I think. But I think the structure of society has really not lent itself well to continuing many of these really important traditional and ancestral things that we have that has allowed us to be here for so long very quickly. So it's just very interesting. So I think also the community aspect in the postpartum period, just relating it back to fertility, is one of the most difficult things, because if you don't have a community, they say it takes a village to raise a child. It really does. And that lack of community, or at least you can try to build a community. This is something I encourage my mothers to do prior to delivering, so that they have resources and support. But it can be really, really difficult on new parents if they don't have that support. And it can just really make or break parental experience and even relationships with husband and wife. So yeah, I think community is super important. I love that you include that.
Sure. Yeah. And one more thing, if you don't mind, I wanted to touch on what we were just talking about with the whole sin and confessing. I just wanted to add that into there. It truly does. I can share my experience. It truly does take a huge weight off your shoulders. It's just something you have to, I think, experience yourself. And yeah, it's that's why it's included into our pillars, because you can be doing the nourishment, you can be doing all your great environmental stuff and moving, but you could still be having some sort of anxiety deep down in you, or you could be having some turmoil where it's just destroying your inner peace. That's what we're taught, is to always keep your inner peace and don't let anything sway you off your inner peace, because you have that control. We have that ability in our mind to not let it sway us off. So
in James 5:16, for those Christians that may not believe that maybe a priest is important, even still in James, he says to confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. I mean, it's so important. It's essential. It's the foundation of Christianity, yet it's so overlooked. The goal is really to sincerely intend to amend and make serious change. Like you're leaving to actually make serious change. Like the thing is, we're in the process. We were saved. We're in the process of being saved, and we hope to be saved. So it's a process of salvation, if you want to call that. And that being said, you're going to fall many times, and we have to. What I learned early on is when we dwell on our sins are past, and this goes for everybody too, because we all have problems we've done and stuff, and we still think about them. My spiritual father, he's like, oh, that's the worst sin of all. That's the utmost pride. I'm like, what are you talking about? I actually got offended because I was like, I feel so bad. I did this and that when I was younger, and he's like, no, that's not true Christianity. He's like, that's actually you assuming that your sin is greater than God's grace, and it's a form of pride because you think it's like you can't get away from thinking about that. That's kind of what I think, in my opinion, what I've seen with a lot of these communities. Like you were just talking about trauma, it's kind of snuck its way in its own community, the trauma community, you could call it. And it's like, yes, we need to be present with that problem, that sin, whatever happened, whether it was to us or we did something to someone else in the past. And we have to pray about it. And yes, we can confess about it, but eventually we have to move forward and stop dwelling in the past, because again, that's not reality. Yeah. And that's what our spiritual father teaches us, that sometimes the devil can make us, dwell in our past and, be stuck there and just a constant loop. So that's what hopefully that we explained confession and like sin and stuff like that, and kind of in a realm of trauma that really layers to other people's lives who are watching this as well, because really it's all the same thing. It's just different wording. And hopefully you guys can take something home with that, because we truly do believe that has changed our life so much. It's an incredible feeling. And, of course, we're not perfect. We constantly, go through problems, but this is giving us the tools in our toolbox to help us from reacting too much from when we mess up or we do something or a stressful situation happens, etc. And it's just one part of the toolbox that's helping us to be more sound and peaceful. But, I still driving on the road and I flip someone off accidentally. I'm like, oh, geez, what am I doing? I'm like,
we're not perfect. Yeah.
Well, I love that. I love the genuineness that you are sharing, and it's definitely hopeful too. I think for anyone that might feel stuck, like you described. So I really appreciate that. All right, Nick and Nathan, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I have found this conversation so illuminating, and I know that the audience will as well. And I hope it's given you guys, the audience, some additional information to really think about, especially how all the pillars align, and especially the mental and spiritual side of things that you might be overlooking. But I ask this question to everybody, so I would really love to hear from you. What is one thing that you would like to share with the audience that they can start doing today to unlock the innate wisdom of their body? And you've shared so much already. Definitely feel free to share as simple or complex a thing as you'd like. But this podcast is about the innate wisdom of the body, and I would love to hear from you. If there's just one thing that could start today, what would that be?
Forgiveness.
Go ask for forgiveness from whoever it may be, your siblings, your parents, your coworkers, somebody you despise. Go ask them. Someone you had an argument with a year or two ago. It could be anybody, but yeah, I think that's a good one.
Yeah, people you got to forgive. You got to let go, let it flow, right? That's what everyone always says. So, but seriously, you got to,
truly from the heart. It has to be from the heart too. It can't just be how you ask it, I think makes a difference too. You have to truly want to ask for forgiveness from somebody.
Because that lack of forgiveness, that will show up in your relationships. It's just creating more disunity and separation. And it just creates turmoil and physical problems as well. Like we talked about with that physical therapist I worked with, who was one of the best in the world I've ever met. And, this was before I was even Christian, understanding simple moral values, right? And that's what she said, that, she thinks a lot of these physical manifestations of, poor posture are a direct result from just emotional damage, trauma, or oftentimes it's just us not forgiving people, having assumptions about people, and focusing too much on others, rather than ourselves. So,
or is the opposite true? Focusing too much on ourselves rather than others.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah,
giving
exactly. Yeah. It's not just so black and white and so simple. Exactly. Yeah. Can't overlook that. That's 100% true.
Good point.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I really love that. And I think forgiveness in general creates a more beautiful world. And I'm here for that. So thank you for that. So how can people find you and support you?
Yeah, you can check out our website. It's www.mitigatestress.com. There we have our hydration guide. It's a free guide that goes over 6 different weeks, just taking you through simple exercises that I'm sure we've all done, from standing to squatting to lunging to hinging, picking something up.
But it's the cues.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
It's the cues.
Nick really took over that guide. He's mainly in the videos there. I'm not too much in the videos, but
it's designed to prepare you for, it's everything we talked about in a guide, and we're always optimizing it, because it's kind of like an annoying thing, because it's not where we want it to be, but it's the best version yet, of course. But we're always trying to make it more sustainable, more realistic, more practical, and it's just, we're trying to hydrate people again through nourish, mobility, movement, and a lot of it is through these movements, because if you can't do these basic foundational movements, like you can't lunge to pick something up, you have knee pain, you can't bend over and hinge
without having back pain.
That's going to affect a lot in your body. And, we talk about a little bit about hot baths and walking and the fat formulas as well as minerals. And we just are constantly trying to optimize it to where it's just super simple, clear cut, and straightforward, and again, yields the most results. But it's something that we want everybody to get on because it's a foundation no matter what program you're in, whether you are doing CrossFit or bodybuilding or combat sports, or you're just a single dude who has a really active career, or
You're trying to get pregnant.
To get pregnant. Yeah. It's lowering stress. It's increasing hydration.
Which is only going to help. Yeah. Like what you talk about, to nourish your body, you're about to have another child. You want your body as nourished and just in the best possible, what am I trying to say, position. You want to create as much space. I even notice it with my wife, like, and all these different people. There's, I don't know, a handful of people that are pregnant at our church, and constantly newborns being born every month at our church. It's an amazing sight to see, but you see a lot of people with these issues they go through, and we truly believe our guide can help females go through pregnancy and have less pain and be able to be more mobile and create more space for your baby, because a lot of things get crushed upon, or you have sciatica, or you're going to the bathroom every 5 minutes. I think a lot of these things we cannot see as much. I don't know if we're going to fix it 100%. I have no idea, but
it's going to help a lot.
We hope.
Oh, it will.
It will. Yeah, it will. Hope. No matter, we talk about it on our website, no matter your goal, whatever you're trying to achieve, this guide is there as a foundation and can help whatever your goal is. So yeah, give it a shot and put your heart into it and try it. And if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out. We're here to help you.
One more thing too, the free hydration guide is going to go into a paid membership, which is going to be our walking membership. So we want to have like a membership where it was closed off and we could share a lot more in-depth information without, people swaying other people and trying to, disagree with us. Instagram's crazy. There's professionals everywhere. So we want it to be more, simple like that, which that's the point of the hydration guide. Is it's the foundation. Again, no matter what you're doing, you should be doing these things like the myofascial release. It's the ultimate recovery, and that's what's going to prepare you for our walking membership. So that's coming soon. Be on the lookout for that.
I love that. Thank you so much for breaking that down. And definitely everyone go check out those resources that they mentioned. And Nick and Nate, thank you so much for being here today. It was a pleasure having you.
Sure. Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. We'll stay in touch. Thank you so much for listening to the Innate Wisdom Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and share the podcast with someone who you think might benefit. If you're new here, we can't recommend enough that you take advantage of my free resources, like the Get Pregnant Yesterday checklist, Cycle Literacy Guide, Prenatal Primer, and Sperm Booster Manual. And if you're trying to conceive now or in the near future, I invite you to join my pregnancy prep e-course, Conscious Inception. Make sure to follow me on Instagram too, at innate_fertility, and consider joining my newsletter to receive exclusive content related to fertility and so much more. A friendly reminder, the content shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be a substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice.